I never thought I'd be the person lurking in a coffee shop parking lot at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, but there I was, engine off, phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. My boyfriend of 3 years, Mark, had told me he was working late, again. But his location-sharing app, the one we downloaded for safety during road trips, showed him across town at a bistro called the Olive Branch. I'd never heard of it. When I googled it, the first photo was of candlelit tables and wine glasses gleaming under soft chandeliers. Not exactly a grabbing takeout kind of place. Things had been off between us for months. The inside jokes had dried up, date nights became microwave dinners in silence, and his phone was always face down, buzzing with notifications he'd dismiss with a flick of his thumb. I told myself he was stressed about his promotion, that we were just in a rut. But then came the perfume. A sweet, floral scent on his collar one night, something light and expensive, nothing like the vanilla body spray I'd worn since college. When I asked about it, he shrugged and said it must have been from a coworker's hug. You know how Linda is, he said, rolling his eyes. Linda, his 55-year-old manager who collected ceramic owls and called everyone honey. Sure. I waited in my car, my knees bouncing nervously, until I saw them. Mark, in his gray peacoat, holding the door open for a woman with auburn hair tucked under a cream beret. She laughed at something he said, her gloved hand brushing his arm. My stomach dropped. She was beautiful in a way that felt intentional, like she'd stepped out of a fall catalog, all cashmere and polished boots. They slid into a corner booth, and I watched as he leaned in, his smile easy and familiar. I took a shaky photo through the window, my hands trembling so badly it blurred. The next hour was a blur of tears and rage. I drove home, tore through his desk drawers, and found what I'd been too trusting to look for before, a folded receipt for a jewelry store, dated 2 weeks prior. A $1,200 charge for a sapphire necklace. My birthday wasn't for months. Beneath it was a boarding pass for a flight to Denver, next weekend, when he'd supposedly be at a team-building retreat. I felt sick. I'd packed his suitcase for that trip myself, tucking his favorite sneakers into the side pocket. Confronting him was messy. He denied it at first, then crumbled when I showed him the photo. Her name was Clara. They'd met at a conference, started as friends, and it just happened. He begged for forgiveness, swore it was only twice that he'd ended it. But when I demanded he block her number, he hesitated. She's going through a hard time, he said quietly. That's when I knew it wasn't over. The twist? Clara wasn't some random fling. I messaged her, half expecting silence, but she agreed to meet. Over tea, she revealed she'd been his college girlfriend, the one he described as practically a sister after they'd amicably split. Except their breakup wasn't mutual. She'd left him after he cheated, and now, 10 years later, he'd sought her out to apologize and reignite old flames. He said you two were basically roommates, she admitted, wincing. That the love was gone. I moved out the next week. Mark oscillated between angry texts, "You're throwing away 3 years," and desperate voicemails, "I'll go to therapy." But the kicker? Clara showed up at my new apartment a month later, eyes red. He did the same thing to me again, she said. Turns out, while I was signing my lease, he'd reconnected with another ex online, a girl from his gym. It's been 6 months. I'm in a book club now, and I adopted a terrier mix named Gus. Some days, I still wonder if I could have fixed things. But then I remember the way he looked at her in that bistro, like she was the first sip of water after a drought. And I realize, love shouldn't make you feel like a desert. Story 2. I never imagined that a simple act of kindness could unravel the very fabric of my life. It all began when I met Emily during our college years. She was vibrant, ambitious, and had an infectious zest for life. We quickly became inseparable, sharing dreams of the future and supporting each other through the challenges of young adulthood. After graduation, we decided to move in together, renting a cozy apartment in the city. Our relationship blossomed, and soon, I was certain that Emily was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We talked about marriage, children, and growing old together. Everything seemed perfect. One evening, Emily came home looking distressed. She confided in me that her younger brother, Jake, had gotten himself into financial trouble. He had accumulated significant debt due to poor financial decisions and was now facing legal consequences. Emily was desperate to help him but didn't have the means to do so. Without hesitation, I offered to lend Jake the money he needed. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, but I couldn't bear to see Emily in pain. She was overwhelmed with gratitude, and together, we believed we had averted a crisis. Jake was thankful and promised to repay the loan as soon as possible. Over time, he became a frequent visitor at our apartment, often seeking advice or simply spending time with us. I considered him part of the family and was glad to help him get back on his feet. Months passed, and I began to notice subtle changes in Emily's behavior. She became more secretive, often texting late into the night and guarding her phone closely. When I inquired, she dismissed my concerns, attributing her behavior to work stress and personal matters. One weekend, Emily told me she was going on a work retreat. I didn't think much of it until a mutual friend mentioned seeing her at a nearby cafe during the time she was supposed to be away. My curiosity was piqued, and I decided to investigate further. I accessed our shared computer and discovered a series of emails between Emily and Jake. The messages revealed a deep emotional connection that had developed between them, far beyond the typical sibling relationship. My heart sank as I read their confessions of love and plans to be together. Confronting Emily was one of the most challenging moments of my life. She broke down, admitting that her relationship with Jake had evolved during the times he sought our help. They had crossed boundaries, and she had been torn between her feelings for him and her commitment to me. Feeling utterly betrayed, I ended our relationship and moved out of the apartment. The emotional turmoil was immense, and I struggled to make sense of the situation. The woman I loved had chosen her own brother over me, shattering my trust and leaving me questioning everything. In the aftermath, I sought therapy to process the betrayal and rebuild my life. I learned the importance of setting boundaries and recognizing that not everyone has the capacity to honor trust. While the scars remain, I have slowly started to heal, focusing on personal growth and surrounding myself with supportive friends and family. This experience taught me that even the most well-intentioned actions can lead to unforeseen consequences. It's crucial to remain vigilant and communicate openly in relationships, ensuring that trust is maintained and boundaries are respected. Story 3. I met Laura during our sophomore year of college. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her presence, charismatic, intelligent, and effortlessly beautiful. We quickly became inseparable, sharing late-night study sessions, spontaneous road trips, and dreams of a future together. Our relationship felt like a fairy tale, and after graduation, we decided to move in together, renting a charming apartment in the heart of the city. Life was good. I landed a job at a reputable marketing firm, and Laura pursued her passion for art, working at a local gallery while creating her own pieces on the side. Our days were filled with laughter, mutual support, and the excitement of building a life together. I was convinced that Laura was my soulmate, and I often thought about proposing to her. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I returned home to find Laura waiting for me with a mischievous grin. She had planned a surprise weekend getaway to a cozy cabin in the mountains, just the two of us. I was thrilled by her spontaneity and eagerly anticipated the trip. The weekend was magical. We hiked through scenic trails, cooked meals together, and spent our nights curled up by the fireplace, talking about everything and nothing. On our last night, as we lay under a blanket of stars, Laura turned to me with a serious expression. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice trembling slightly. My heart raced. I braced myself for whatever was coming next. "I've been offered a residency at an art institute in Paris," she said. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it means I'll be away for 6 months." I was taken aback but quickly masked my disappointment. This was her dream, and I wanted to support her. "That's amazing, Laura," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm so proud of you. We'll make it work." She looked relieved and hugged me tightly. "Thank you for understanding. I was so worried about how you'd react." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. We spent as much time together as possible, savoring each moment before her departure. When the day finally came, I drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, and promised to visit her in Paris as soon as I could. At first, we maintained regular contact through video calls and messages. Laura would excitedly share stories about her projects and the vibrant Parisian art scene. I missed her terribly but took comfort in knowing she was living her dream. However, as the weeks went by, our communication became sporadic. Laura often seemed distracted during our calls, and her responses to my messages grew shorter and less frequent. I attributed it to her busy schedule and tried not to overthink it. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I noticed a photo tagged with Laura's name. It was a candid shot of her laughing with a group of people at a cafe. My eyes were drawn to a man sitting next to her, his arm casually draped over her shoulders. They looked undeniably close. A knot formed in my stomach, but I dismissed it as paranoia. Laura had never given me a reason to doubt her, and I trusted her implicitly. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between us seemed to grow. Laura's messages became increasingly infrequent, and our video calls were often cancelled due to her hectic schedule. I tried to be understanding, reminding myself that this was her dream, and I didn't want to burden her with my insecurities. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through Laura's social media profiles. I noticed that the man from the cafe photo appeared in several of her recent posts. In one picture, they stood side by side at an art exhibit, their faces close together as they admired a painting. In another, they were part of a group photo, but his hand rested possessively on her waist. My mind raced with possibilities, each more distressing than the last. I decided to confront Laura, needing to hear the truth from her own lips. The next day, during our scheduled video call, I mustered the courage to ask, "Laura, who is that guy in your recent photos? You two seem close." She hesitated, her eyes darting away from the camera. "Oh, that's Julian. He's a fellow artist at the Institute. We've been collaborating on a few projects." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you sure there's nothing more to it?" Laura sighed, rubbing her temples. "I knew you'd react like this. Can't I have male friends without you getting jealous?" Her defensiveness caught me off guard. "It's not about jealousy, Laura. It's about trust. You've been distant lately, and I'm just trying to understand what's going on." She looked at me, her expression softening. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how it seemed. Julian and I are just friends, I promise." I wanted to believe her, to put my fears to rest. But a nagging feeling lingered, whispering that something was amiss. As the weeks passed, Laura's behavior grew more erratic. She became elusive, often missing our scheduled calls and taking hours, sometimes days, to respond to my messages. When we did speak, she seemed distracted, her mind elsewhere. One evening, while working late at the office, I received a message from a mutual friend who had recently visited Paris. It was a photo of Laura and Julian, holding hands as they strolled along the Seine. The caption read, "Spotted these two lovebirds today." My heart shattered. The evidence was undeniable. Laura was cheating on me. I spent the night in a daze, replaying our relationship in my mind, searching for signs I might have missed. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. The next day, I decided to confront her once more. I called her, and to my surprise, she answered. "Hey," she greeted, her voice cheerful. "I was just about to call you." I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. "Laura, I know about you and Julian. I saw a photo of you two holding hands." There was a long pause. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down my face as the reality of her betrayal sank in. "Why, Laura? Why would you do this?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed. "It started as a friendship, but then, I don't know. I got caught up in the moment." I felt a surge of anger. "Caught up in the moment? We've been together for years, and you threw it all away for a fling." "It's not like that," she pleaded. "I still love you. I made a mistake." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. This was a choice. You chose to betray me." There was nothing more to say. I ended the call, feeling a hollow emptiness settle in my chest. In the days that followed, I packed up Laura's belongings and shipped them to her in Paris. I couldn't bear to have reminders of her in the apartment we had shared. Friends reached out, offering support, but I found little comfort in their words. I threw myself into work, using it as a distraction from the pain.